understand that, wouldn't you? And so he's got to stay focused. He's the man of God. He's got to do it. And then, of course, summer, you'd understand that. Kids are out of school. We got to have DBBS, and then we may have some camps we got to go to, and it's a busy time. We got to be busy. And then, of course, you understand fall mission conferences, maybe some kind of harvest festival. We take kids out on these old hay wagons, and we sing songs and with all that. You understand that. And then we got to get ready for winter. But you'd understand that, wouldn't you? And I can see Timothy, and he's getting ready again to study, and he goes into his study, and he gets everything kind of ready, and he looks out the window, and his heart stops. And he begins to see snowflakes, just a little bit of it, just coming down, and he thinks, oh my. And he gets up, he turns around, and he looks up, and he says, yeah, it's got to be up there. And he moves a bunch of gold. There it is. Knocks the dust off of it and pulls it down. He don't care a thing about the front of it. But he goes towards the end. And there are again. Timothy, do thy diligence to come shortly to me. And he looks down. There it is again. Timothy, do thy diligence to come before winter. Can you see him as he turns and says to his assistant and knocks on the door and says to him, whatever his name is, you know what the plans are. I don't have time to explain. Where are you going, preacher? I don't have time to go. I'm going to Rome. I don't have time. You know the plans. You'll have to do the preaching. Buck up, man. I got to go. Can you see him go out his door, down to the cobblestone streets, heads by, gets his little apartment, gets a valise, packs it. Snow's coming down a little bit more now. Now he's moving down towards where the ticket office is, down by the ocean side there. Surely it'll be open, and he goes down there, and he gets towards the end of it. He doesn't look like anybody's in there, but surely somebody's in there. So he goes and he knocks on the door. There's a little window. Doesn't see anybody, but he pounded on the door, and he looks inside. There's another inner door. Well, he could see surely some in. I see some light under there. So he keeps pounding on the door, and the old man opens it. He comes out and slowly goes over and opened that outer door and said, yes, young man, how can I help you? Sir, I need a ticket. I need a ticket quick. He said, I've got to get to Rome. Can I go tonight? If there's one going tonight, I need to get on it. I got to go. And can you see the old man saying, son, the last ship that sailed to Rome sailed yesterday. Look at the weather, son. We can't send any ships out on this. The next ship going to Rome is coming in the spring. Can you see old Timothy's shoulders fall down? Makes his way back up slowly, drops off his valise, goes into his little office and tells him, I'm back. I wonder what 3 words would have bombarded that young preacher boy's mind. Timothy, come before winter. Why is it, folks, we're such great procrastinators? Yeah, I was going to visit Aunt so-and-so, and I really was, except she's gone now. And winter came, and you never made it. I was going to. I really was. I didn't know that accident was happening. I was going to witness that guy. Yeah, you were going to, except winter came. Yeah, I really planned on. I was going to. That's what most of us spent our time with. I'm really going to do that. But isn't it something that we never get there? We've got it all planned out, but we're good at procrastinating and saying, I really am going to do that. But we never get there. And the old adage is true, how soon too late comes. I want to tell you what precipitated this message. I was talking to Brother Wrights about it because he was there, and I think Belva was there too. I preach a lot up in the mountains of Sri Lanka and in India. And I want to just clear off a place and say something here. I preach a lot overseas, and I preach to a lot of crowds of people. But I want to tell you something. You'll hear reports from what I call these hot dog hotshots. They'll come over from a country like India and said, hey, we had 3,500 people saved. That's a lie out of the pit of hell. You know what a Tamil will do? He'll just add Jesus to the other 100,000 gods he got. And you can get people to come and come in groups, and they'll come down and they'll say yes to Jesus. And if you believe that stuff, you go home and shout it out. We had 3,500 people saved. We learned a long time ago that just added something to their other gods. We have to hone down on them people on John 14:6 and places like there. You don't come through Jesus, you're not coming. And I know many times I've had to point at those old Hindu temples and say, you don't leave that thing, you're not coming. Jesus is the only way. I just want to clear this off because I'm going to talk about that part of the world tonight, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea. People do get saved over there just like they do here. If somebody went on these reservations and said, we had 400 saved the other night, what did you guys say? No, you didn't. But people do get saved at the reservation, don't they? So I just want you to understand, I was with this guy. He's a great preacher, Brother Wright, isn't he? And God's used that man. And I remember in a village one night, standing behind a van with the other missionary, he preached, and that entire village came. I remember that Terry was standing by me, and he saw by the rally. I said, what's wrong? Because I couldn't see what it was. He said, the whole village is. And they literally did. By the time we weeded that thing down, I think we had 66. Great message. I just want you to know that tonight so you don't have an idea that Brother Elliott's in that crowd, because I'm not going to get in that crowd. It's a hard field, but people do get saved, and I rejoice when they do, just like you do. But I want to tell you about an incident that happened one night up in the mountains. He was there. We were getting ready, and in the afternoons, we'll sometimes send basically some young people, and we always have a lot of people go with us, and we have little groups that can sing, and I think Brother Wrights and some have sang that night. And what'll happen, we'll go through these villages, and they're little squalors is all they are. These tea people are out plucking tea all day, and they come in, they cook outside. It's a mess, I'll tell you. So we just go along. Well, I wanted to walk along. I can't do much, but they're trying to invite people. Come tonight, come down. We usually have a big area down where they can come. Sometimes the kids play down in that area. And so we had it rigged up so we could have a microphone. We could preach that night. And we told them later on, you all come down tonight and hear what we've got to say. And so as we're walking through the village and everybody's handing out, I'm walking with my name's Shankar. He's now a preacher over there, but he was my interpreter that night. And in fact, I don't think I was preaching. I think maybe Brother Wright's right. I can't remember who was preaching, but I was going to be involved in that service. And so I'm walking along with Shankar. And as we're going along, he stopped and said, just a minute, preacher. And a man came up to him and started talking to him. And Shankar said, Brother, this young man says, would you pray for his daddy? He's very, very sick. And I said, yes, but Shankar, you tell him. You set him straight about me. See, over there, if they think you're a man of God, they think you're a faith healer. They think if you pray, then everything's going to turn. So I said, now, Shankar, be sure you explain this. And I said, where does he want me to go? Into the house or here? He said, no, just right here. So I just knelt and prayed for his dad and knew he was very, very sick and prayed. Of course, my heart was pounding because I knew that if we had time, maybe that man could hear, because it wasn't far off and we had big speakers and that guy could hear, and boy, that just on my heart. Well, we walked on around and did one thing, and then it got a little darker and the people were able to get back in and get ready for the meeting. And we're just about getting ready. I think it might have been some singing. I can't remember, preacher, but I do remember I was sitting on a plastic chair with Shankar, and all of a sudden, like a blood-curdling scream just penetrated that mountain air, and it just stopped everybody. It was blood-curdling. And Shankar jumped up, and 2 or 3 people, and I didn't, of course, couldn't do it. And so I just sit there, and a few minutes later, Shankar came back and whispered in the air, and he said, Brother Elliott, that man you prayed for just died. And I remember sitting on that plastic chair, and I dropped my head, and I thought, God, we were 5 or 10 minutes in him hearing the gospel, and we never made it. And it went through my heart, why, God, you gave a commission 2,000 years ago to go into all the world. And I couldn't fault Brother Terry. I couldn't fault Brother Roy. We were there. But God used that coincidence to me to say, that's why I gave the commission. Because there's people all over this world that are dying, and winter is coming. Yeah. And for that night, that winter came to that man. And being close isn't close enough. You could be 5 minutes away from giving the gospel, but if he didn't get it, he didn't get it. And that burdened me. And the rest of the time that I was there, it troubled me. And it was one of those times when God just was speaking to Charlie Elliott here about why are we so procrastinators? Why is it we're always just 5 minutes late? We were going to go there and we didn't get there. And so, you know, when you're on an airplane and coming halfway around the world, you got a lot of time to think, a lot of time to pray. I begin to say to myself on the plane, God, you got to show me why it is we don't get there before winter. Because I don't understand, God. Why is it these precious people in this mountain villages area have never heard? It's all over America. It's on radio. It's on TV. It's in churches. Those people up there have never heard. And why is it that we don't get there on time? And I'm just going to tell you two things that God gave me. And I believe that God made it as clear as he could through his word. You want to go back to Matthew 9, I'll let you go back there. I'll talk to you for just a minute. And I believe in my heart the reason we don't get to where we need to go before winter is because we do not see people the way God sees people. We don't. Now, let's be honest. Go like that, okay? How do you see people? Well, for most of us, it's just somebody to observe, right? Ooh, boy, that guy's tall. Boy, he's little. Boy, she's fat. Well, he ain't got no hair. Well, he's got half hair. Well, his is purple. Well, he's got things in his nose. Wow, baggy pants. We laugh about that, but that's how we see people, isn't it? They're just people walking by to observe. Oh, yeah, it's just, there's another guy walking down. Yeah, coming out of Walmart. There's another lady. Yeah, that's all we see. Sometimes they're just a nuisance. Hey, lady, the green light's only been green for 3 hours. Think you could go? Go like that. Yeah, it's true. Go into a Walmart. Hey, sir, it says 10 items or less. I counted 40. Oh. I was preaching. I don't know why things come to our mind, Brother Terry. When you preach. I was preaching down in Texas, and this is a number of years ago, and the preacher picked me up, and he had a pickup, and this is before you had to strap the kids in, and he was going to take me to lunch, and he said, preacher, I hope you don't mind. I got my little grandson with me today. He said his mom had some appointment, wanted to know if we could take him to lunch. And I said, sure. So we got him kind of buckled in between us, and we went out. We ate, and when we were getting ready to take him back to the hotel, he said, do you mind, Brother Elliott? He said, I just got to run by the house. It'll only be just a minute. And he said, if you don't mind, I got to pick up something, and I'll take you straight to the hotel. I said, sure. So we go up, and we pull up in his driveway, and he turns the key off, and he says, do you mind if the little one just stays here in the truck? And I said, no problem with me. He said, oh, it'll be a minute. So we unbuckled him because the kid was squirming. He said, he'll just stand there by you. And if you don't mind, I'll run in real quick and I'll be right back out. So I said, go ahead, preacher, whatever you need to do. Well, the little boy, he moves over to where his grandpa had been driving. And being about 5 years old, he's going like this. thing like this. And all of a sudden he went, honk, honk, you idiot! And I thought, reckon where he learned that? Yeah. Because sometimes people are just a nuisance. Sometimes they're just to be used. Barnum and Bailey said, a fool's born every day, so they created the circus. Because you make a lot of money for people to come and see the clowns. That's not the way God sees people. Go back to Matthew 9. You know the verses 35 and 36 when he looked out the multitude. Look how he saw them as sheep scattered without a shepherd. God didn't see people the way you and I see people. We wake up, they're a nuisance, they're in the way, Hong Kong, good, God, you're in my way. Let's go, let's go, let's go. But God sees people. If you could almost picture it, just lining up one by one, going out like this and out, large width columns, and as far as you can see behind, just marching in lockstep towards a godless hell. And we never see that. We just see the cute sandals. I don't know what it's going to take, but I know that God's going to have to do something in our hearts. I believe that. Because you can preach about this, but something's got to be done. My sending church is not now, but it was for a number of years, Western Hills Baptist Church in Glendale, Arizona. The pastor was Greg Hart. See, he's not there now, a guy named Ben Moore's pastor. But when Greg was there, he was my senior pastor, I felt like I needed him to go with me on a trip. And he was struggling, trying to get the work going. It was only running about 40. He had just been there and getting things going. I said, preacher, you need to go with me on a trip. You know that's going to be my main ministry, and you need to be there. He agreed to go. And so he did. And we went up, and when we go up, we always go to the tea country because that's the place God's always put on my heart. And so nobody wants those tea people. They come over from India. India doesn't want them. The government in Sri Lanka doesn't want them. So they work for $3 a day and live in squalor. And I just got to go up and try to preach to them. And so I always said to Brother Terry, let's go while we take a few days while I'm up here. And he always does. And so we're going along, and we're going to have a meeting that night. But in the day, it's just pouring down rain. I mean, torrential rain. And we're all in a van. And the idea is we're going to be out handing out, everywhere we go, we're trying to witness, hand out tracts, talk to people, do whatever we can. And that's just what we do. And so we're doing, but it's raining. So what are you going to do? And so we're just driving along, and we come to, I guess, a fork in the road. Now, Brother Terry, they're driving on the right side, so he's up here, and Greg's over here, the pastor, and I'm sitting behind with there's another row, and then in the back are some pastors' wives. And so here we are. And all of a sudden, Terry stops, and he said, Myra, that's his wife. He said, this is before GPS. He said, I don't have a clue where we are. He said, would you look? And so she gets a map out. Well, while she's getting the map out and trying to figure where we are, I'll call him Greg, Pastor Greg. Greg is sitting up in the front. We've been handing out Tamil tracts, so he knows what. We got boxes of one for Tamil, some from Sinhalese, some for, and he reaches down and gets 5 tracts. Now, I find this out later, but tell you what he did. He picks up 5 tracts. It's pouring down rain. He sees up on the side of a mountain tea pluckers with plastic over them. Ladies, only ones can do it with the dexterity, and they can't quit working. So they're just plucking tea. Rain's coming down torrential. He sees 5 of them, so he grabs 5 tracts, jumps out, soaking wet, goes up to a border. They have small border fences along, just concrete that lets you know which tea plantation it is. And he can't go any farther, he stops. And he takes those 5 tracts and goes like that. Those ladies drop everything they're doing and come running down the hill, and he gives each one of them a tract, sopping wet, comes back, gets in the van, and he's weeping. And when somebody does that and gets in the van, you give him space. So everybody just sat there for a while, didn't know what to say, and he just kind of hung his head. It wasn't a loud cry, but you could tell he was. And then I heard him say, Brother Terry, go ahead and go. And so we go on. Well, fortunately that night, it cleared up a little bit and we had the meeting. That was on a Friday night. So we had to head down the mountain in order to get back to the main church in Colombo, so be ready for Sunday morning. We're staying in the pastor's home, and Brother Greg and I shared a room. I just was taking a shower. I was dead tired. It was Saturday night. I was wanting to get ready for tomorrow. I had to preach. And so I was already in my little bed, and he just come out of the shower and went on his side of the room. Said, do you mind if I leave the light on? Well, blind guys don't care if the light's on. So I said, yeah, it's okay, And so I was just kind of, how it is, just trying to start to go to sleep. And he said, Brother, you awake? And I said, yeah, what's going on, brother? He said, God changed my life yesterday. And I said, what? He said, I know you think I'm kidding you. Brother Elliott, God changed my life yesterday. God changed my life. I said, tell me about it. He told me that story. He said, brother, when I looked up there, he said, I was always a preacher. I'm going to preach the word. I always cared about people until I realized I didn't care about people. And he said, I don't know what going on. But he said, Brother Elliott, when I waved that, I knew the only thing between me and them and any hope of heaven was 5 pieces of paper. They're drenching in my rainy hand. And he said, they're running down. And he said, all I could see when I saw them was their eyes. And he said, Brother Elliott, I looked into pure despair. And he said, God ripped my heart out and said, Greg Hardesty, that's the reason you're on this earth. And he said, God changed my life. And he did. It wasn't just a thing. In fact, it's been people said, brother, you got to write a book on soul winning. When that guy came back, everything in that church changed. Everything changed with him. His days wasn't spent just sitting in an office. He went out where the folks was. He would drive down avenues in Phoenix and see somebody needing something, and he'd stop and change a tire with them and try to win them to Jesus. He'd chase people down into parks, and he'd bring them to church, and they'd get saved. And he kept it up, and he kept it up, and he kept it up until he almost lost all his health over that. And he'll tell you it happened because for the first time in my life, I saw people the way God saw people. Lost and on their way to hell. And I'm convinced it's going to take something. I used to think, we'll just preach it and they'll do it. No, they're not going to do it. You're not going to do it either until God gets a hold and yanks our chain and says, we're not on this earth to play around, to observe who's got the neatest new trend in something. We're here to look out and say that man or woman may be lost, and I've got to do something because winter's coming. And it's coming quicker than we think. I don't know what it's going to take, but I left a little challenge after that to a young preacher over there by the name of Boudica. Now, I'll give you a little bit of indication what his prior religion was. The Buddha got saved out of Buddhism. He speaks fluent Sinhalese, which is the main people of the island. And he got called to preach, and we got him trained at the Bible Institute. So he got started at a little church, and I'd always preach for him when I was over there, at least once. And he sat down with me one day, and he said, Brother Elliott, I just don't know what's wrong. He said, I just don't like these people. I said, well, you're one of them. He said, I don't like me either. And he said, but They're just a nuisance. He said, if you ever drove over there, you know why. They don't have any rules. And he just said, that's not right, preacher, but what am I going to do? I look out and I think they're just in the way. And I don't know why I did this, but I said, Boudica, let me leave a challenge with you. And over there, he didn't have a car. He had what we call a little trishaw. It's just a motorcycle, and it's got two wheels in the back and kind of a seat across. So you can put your family in, and the driver can be up here. And that's what they used to get around. And so I said, Boudica, and I told him, go up on Elephant Road. I knew of it, not by sight, but I knew where the area was. And it was an area where masses of people, and over there, people just walk and walk and walk. And just, you could just see them in mass heading to hell almost. They're just walking and walking and walking. And it's where buses come and interchange, and people can get on buses and go to villages and do things. And I knew there were places you could sit there. And I said, Boudica, let me give you a challenge. Get in your little trishaw and go up there someday and get on one of those benches and just sit there and watch people. And I said, but when you go by, look into their eye and ask yourself this, I wonder where they're going to spend eternity. And just look at them. And every time you see a lady, look at her eyes and say, I wonder when it's going to be too late for her. And after you sit there about an hour and just watch more and more, see if God doesn't do something in your heart. I went back, I went every 6 months. I went back and asked him. I didn't even have to ask him. He came up to me. He said, brother, it's just something about looking at people. Get in where you want, but where people come in and out. And park it such a way you can walk them when they come out the door. And don't say, oh, neat sneakers. But look in their eye and ask a couple of questions. I wonder, and said, I wonder where she's going to spell. Soon too late's going to come. I'm going to witness because we don't see people the way God sees people. I believe that. There's another reason. I've asked Brother Wright, go with me, if you will, to Proverbs. I want you to see this. Proverbs chapter 24, verses 11 and 12. I want you to listen to these words. To me, these are chilling words. I mean that. And so listen to them. Listen as Pastor Wright reads these verses.
Proverbs 24, 11 and 12. If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn to death, and those that are ready to be slain, sayest, behold, we knew it not. Doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? He that keepeth that soul, doth not he know it? And render to every man according to his work.
Now let that sink in a minute. God said, if you see somebody drawn into death, and you say, I don't know. God said, don't tell me you don't know. You do know. You got a pretty good idea. See, we're good at trying to fake God out. God said, if you see somebody, and we can apply it to a lot of things, but spiritual death, and you're looking at somebody, and you say, well, I don't know. Neighbors are saying, brother, you got a pretty good idea. You see the parties in the yard. You see the beer cans everywhere. And I don't know if they say, God said, don't you think I know you know? And don't you think I'm going to hold you responsible? And that is the second reason we don't get there before winter. We don't see ourselves the way God sees us. Simply responsible, Charles. Responsible. Well, I don't know. Yes, you do. Well, I don't know if those people were. Yes, you do know. You know in your heart you know. And you and I think we're going to walk off someday and God's going to say, it's okay. You know, I understand. You're busy. God said, no, you're responsible. You're responsible. I was preaching with Brother Ikes we went to Greece. And I was asked to preach for a man by the name of George Demakos. He's a Greek that came over here, got educated, and went back to his people. And a guy named Lane Stockton was over there, and it just so happened that Brother Wrights knew him. And so we went over. And some of the services, of course, Pastor Wrights went with Lane because he knew him, and I went with Brother Demakos. So while I was preaching for Demakos, everybody kept telling me about this young man in the church. I would say he was 28, 29 years old. His name was Vangeli. Demakos told me later in the Greek that means evangelist. But his name Vangeli, and I had a number of people in that church that told me this story of Vangeli. It's all the same story. What it is, Vangeli had some kind of, and no one told me, but some kind of a little bit of a handicap because he couldn't work. So what he would do, we are in the suburbs of Athens, he would get on a train, nice trains, go to the center of Athens where the subways come up, and trains and buses and just masses of people just going every which way. And he would stand out there for hours and hand out tracts. What happened because of that? They almost killed him one time. They beat him so bad. They'd kick him in the shins. They'd bust his nose. And he stayed there. And he went day after day after day. Well, about the second day or so, Demakos said, "You want to go down there?" I thought, "No." I said, "Yeah." So we go down. Vangeli's sitting up ahead of us. We're sitting back. And we get down there, and he said, "Don't worry too much, brother. I think we'll be all right." I said, "Have you ever been hurt, Brother Dawkins?" "Oh, yeah." He said, "My glasses broke. But I don't think they'll bother you." And I thought, okay. So we're standing there, and I experienced a little bit of that. Nobody hit me. But just all he said, "Brother, just all you got to do is just like that. People walk by, see that crack, and spit on it, tear it up, stomp on it, throw it in your face, and walk on." That's what religion will do for you.
Yeah. Right.
We're riding back on the train, Vangeli's sitting above, and I'm thinking about all this, and I reach over to Brother Demakos. I said, "Brother Preacher," I said, "tell me about Vangeli. Why does he do that?" He said, "You know, Brother Elliott, I asked him that one day. I said, Vangeli, why do you do that every day?" He said, he looked at me like, "Well, that's what I'm supposed to do." And he said these words, "That's my responsibility." See, we don't see ourselves as responsible. We have a commission, but it's just a bunch of words to us. Jesus said to go in the world and preach the gospel to everybody. Well, that didn't mean me. Yes, it did mean you. You see, we give a commission and we're going to teach all nations, but we treat it as though it's just a verse in the Bible. But I want to tell you something. God's going to hold you and me responsible for that. You can cop out all you want right now, and so can I. But God's going to say, you're going to be held responsible someday for that, Charlie. I made you responsible. I left that for you. Vangeli caught that. He caught that in his heart. Look, I've got time. I can't work, but I know one thing I can do. I can go down to Center Athens and I can hand out tracts. I came back home, preacher, and I thought about that and went over my life. I've been doing this for 50-some years now. And so when you travel and preach and you build up a lot of memories. And I begin to go back through my mind and think, what is it? Why is it that folks can sit in a church and never feel responsible? It just never bothers them. Oh, maybe for a minute, but then, by the time you get the country music on again, it's gone. And I thought, well, one reason, because we don't see people the way God sees people. But also, some people really believe this. They don't believe that's for them. I thought everybody believed the Great Commission was for them. I found out I was wrong. There's a young preacher and his wife came out of West Coast. Went over to the Glendale area. This is a number of years ago. Swept out an old rabbit hutch type of a building and started a church. And he's doing pretty good, really. And he asked me to come over preach a couple of times, and I did when I was in. And so I was over there one night, and we'd been preaching, and he was talking about God was working and what a wonderful thing, and how to, we had a good crowd. It seemed God was there and all kinds of things. And I went home and told my wife, I said, Jenny, I think God's going to do something here. And I don't know where it was, but it wasn't too much longer. I got a phone call one morning. He said, Brother Elliott, you got a minute? And I said, yes. What's going on, brother? He said, I lost half my church last night. And I'm wanting to say you're kidding me, but I could tell by the tone of voice it wasn't. I said, what happened? He said, I preached on soul winning. I said, tell me. He said, a simple message. All I did was talk about that this church is here to win souls. And he said, one lady stood up and yelled, that's heresy! And a man stood up at the other end and said, you're right, that was for disciples. That's Old Testament and New Testament stuff that's gone today. That's not us. And he walked out and he said, half my church left. And said, we don't believe that stuff. That's not for us today. There are a lot of people who really believe that. That was for those guys. Well, you wouldn't be saved if those guys didn't do what was supposed to be done. And they didn't tell somebody else who told somebody else. And we can try to write that off on our mind. Well, that was those guys, We're kind of in that in our churches today, The paid professional and the lay spectator, Well, let the preacher do it. He's getting paid. No, you're just as responsible as he is. Sometimes it's because we think we're too busy. Oh, I've heard that. Preacher, if you knew my schedule, well, I don't know your schedule. But I know this, that God laid a commission on your heart. Go into the world and preach the gospel to every creature. I was preaching in Missouri in a revival meeting. I was preaching on soul winning and evangelism. And service was ended. Everybody was gone. Preacher's going to take me home. I'm standing there waiting for him to do it. And he said, Brother Elliott, you got just a minute? He said, there's a man sitting down in the middle of the church down there that wants to talk to you. I said, do you mind if I talk to him alone? He said, no, sir, go ahead. I said, well, lead me down there. He was sitting in the middle of a pew. So I went in and I slipped out by him, and the preacher walked back to back. And I said, how can I help you? He said, Brother Elliott, he said, I appreciate that message tonight. I got a conviction about that. But you don't understand something. He said, I run a mine here. He said, 24 hours is not enough time for me. I'm busy from morning to night. I do not have time. And he pulled out 5 $100 bills. And he laid in my hand. And he said, you got the time. Would you do it for me? And I put him back in his hand. And I said, no, I can't do that. Because you're no more responsible than I am. And I'm no more responsible than you are. And it doesn't matter. We're all busy. We're still told to go. God's not going to hear the excuses. Well, I've got kids. Well, I've got that. I've got this. I got that. You know what? You just don't have discipline your time. You just don't have time to say, I'm going to make time. And I'm going to do it because God laid a commission on me. And the reason we don't do it because we don't feel responsible. It's just the truth, isn't it? We don't feel like that we really have to do that. Oh, we could go down the line, different reasons that people give for not doing it. Some people just have cold hearts. But that's what Brother Angel preached about, and I did the other night. You know why that is? Because the fire's gone out. And you've gone from fire to apathy. So it doesn't bother you anymore. It doesn't bother you if you don't come to church anymore. That's a sad place to be. It doesn't bother you to see the crowds go by and let them go to hell. Doesn't matter to me. I got my thing to do. Timothy, come before winter. Can you feel Paul? He loved that guy. I don't know they ever made it. I don't know. Be curious to find out in heaven. And I know that the little biblical journey is just something in my mind, but can you imagine how he would have felt thinking that, oh man, give me his life, training me. And I couldn't get up and get there before winter. Winter's coming. Some of you don't realize winter's coming quicker than you think. You can dilly-dally around with church stuff right now, but I'm going to tell you, when winter comes, you land on that bed and you're facing crossing, winter's coming. And it didn't be fun and games. Oh, I had a great time. We did all these things, and yeah, we were busy, and yeah, we love Jesus. We got saved 14 years ago. Who cares? I'm glad you're saved. But if you're not going on with God, let me tell you, winter's coming. Maybe some of you here, you've heard the gospel. You're mulling around in your mind. But I want to tell you, winter's coming. It comes to all ages, teenagers. You're having a fun time right now, but winter comes. The last funeral I did as a full-time pastor was to Miles, 5 years old. Winter came. Mom and Dad didn't think that was coming. You see, we don't determine the manner or we don't determine the moment, but it comes. As long as I've been in ministry, I've buried teenagers, old people, widows, children. Winter's coming. And one of these days, you and I are going to stand before God and have to answer why we didn't see people the way God saw them and why we didn't see ourselves the way He sees us. If you're here tonight, you've been in these meetings, winter's coming. And you need to deal with God tonight. Father, I pray you will speak in Jesus' name. Stand with me if you will. Preacher, you come.